Welcome to the Unit 1 of Section 3, the unit dedicated to mapping stakeholders. Engaging stakeholders in our planning strategy is key, rightly because we cannot think to operate on the destination all alone or to have all the necessary resources and competencies. So that's why it is so important to ask to ourselves how to identify the actors to collaborate with to develop and manage the destination sustainably. To answer to this question, we are going to explore 4 main topics. We will have an insight on over-tourism and sustainability. We will define stakeholders and identify the key actors of a territory. We will see how to provide the right framework to stakeholders to make them collaborate, and this has to do with the policy, governance, and management of the destination. And finally, we will see some tools to facilitate the interaction and collaboration with and between stakeholders. Fine, we are ready to begin. Let's start with over-tourism and sustainability. Look at this picture. We can hardly recognize the place, the Trevi Fountain in Rome, due to the fact that it is so crowded. And this happens, unfortunately, almost during the whole year. Over-tourism is the impact of tourism on a destination or parts of it that excessively and negatively influences the perceived quality of life of citizens and or the quality of visitor experiences. These are destinations which suffer from a decreasing charge capacity, that is the maximum number of visitors that a location can support without causing an unacceptable alteration of the physical environment, as well as an unacceptable loss of quality of the visitor experience. It is a consequence of over-tourism, which implies a snowball effect. Let's see how it works. It happens that in some situations, following an excessive demand stimulus, the destination becomes a place of visit for a growing number of visitors. The industry responds by strengthening its offer. The resulting economic benefits encourage a progressive concentration of economic activities in that sector, transforming the entrepreneurial context into a monoculture over time. Hence, the economic dependence on many activities on the trend of tourism, until the destination reaches saturation with all the negative environmental, social, and economic externalities. All these externalities will make the destination at the end less attractive and its reconversion more challenging and costly. The intervention of the public sector is very important, both as a prevention of the snowball phenomenon and as interventions for the development of sustainable tourism, as well as interventions for regulating the sector and redeveloping places in the event of over-tourism. Even high-profile events have a major impact on the balance of the destination. The concentration of large masses of people in time and place puts the entire territorial system to the test. The image gives us an example on the after event, a phase that the territory must manage and whose costs are sometimes unpredictable. In this case, it concerns the disposal of the many plastic objects abandoned in the show area. However, in events sector, good practices are spreading in favor of green events that protect the environment, minimize energy consumption, and the impact of waste, as well as make participants aware of their impact and involve local communities in preserving the territory. It is known how sustainability is at the basis of 2030 agenda of the United Nations and its member states, and how tourism can be a powerful transforming force in territories, promoting, if correctly managed, its sustainable development. Boosting sustainable tourism is also a matter of collective contribution and good conduct by the diverse stakeholders, and that's why we consider the following declaration particularly relevant to the topic of locals' involvement. We read that boosting sustainable tourism implies interaction and active participation of tourism stakeholders with a multi-stakeholder and a value chain approach. If you remember, in the introduction of our INCULTUM course, we said that its goal is that of promoting sustainable tourism in peripheral areas through marketing and the involvement of local community. So sustainability is key, as well as the local people. But who are the stakeholders that create value for the destination? Generally speaking, stakeholders are any groups or individual who can affect or is affected by the achievement of the organization objectives. In tourism, stakeholders might be industry operators, government departments and associations, investors and developers, landowners, the industry associations, tourism-related organizations, but also the community, environmental groups, tourists, or visitors. Altogether, they compose the tourism system, in which we can distinguish between tourism industry, made of insiders whose core business depends on tourism, and tourism economy, which entails also other sectors that are synergistic with tourism, like, for example, public transportation, publishing industry, consultancy, and the education system. All the actors coming from tourism industry and economy contribute to create and provide the tourist offer of the destination. The actors of the tourism system can contribute to the success of the destination and its products, not only based on their nature, but also with respect to the interdependence they have with other actors. This is the case of the value chain on the supply side, which is activated in response to the consumer's choice and purchasing process. We are talking about direct supply channels in the case in which the tourist independently chooses and purchases the components of the trip directly from the producers. Instead, we have a more or less mediated channel based on the number and type of intermediaries that are inserted between customer and supplier. These subjects can be the tour operator, the travel agency, the distribution operators, and more recent subjects represented by the yellow boxes in the slide. But in addition to the actors of the supply chain, there are also other stakeholders with whom we can collaborate to make the destination attractive and sustainable. For this reason, it is necessary to maintain an overall vision of the territory in order to seize greater opportunities for collaboration and development. And therefore, we could identify possible partners inside and outside our territory. On the left side, we have a hypothetical list of categories of local subjects from which to start from to then identify the individual persons who can really make a contribution. Likewise, at an extra local level, there may be realities similar to ours or consistent with the project we are developing and with which to partner. Think, for example, of international partnerships to access funding, or to thematic networks that connect different territories, such as the devotional paths, museum networks, event circuits. These are all wonderful opportunities to seize if we know who does what. Speaking of who does what, the next slides show us some key players in Italy who operate at various levels in tourism. Here we have, for example, the institutional level with the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, which, with the establishment of the current government, was divided into two ministries, that of culture, called MIC, and that of tourism, called MITO, whose agency for national tourism promotion is ENIT. Then we have non-governmental entities. For most of the time, these are private or public-funded associations that represent categories of businesses or operators. The word of associations is very complex and is populated by so-called intermediate bodies, rightly because they stand between the government and the individual organization. This slide shows us some families of associations. But beyond identifying the stakeholders, what matters most is their role and level of impact on the objective we set ourselves or on the project we intend to carry out. For each stakeholder, it is important to know who they are, what resources they hold, and what type of activities they can carry out within our project. This slide shows the ecosystem of a project, placing some stakeholders in the circle of internal subjects, meaning those who are directly involved in the project and who have a measurable impact on its success. And then we see also the external stakeholders who do not enter into the operation of the project, but who can still have an interest in it and later also contribute. Those who manage a project often know that the role of stakeholders can change along the implementation of the project. Therefore, the map cannot remain a static representation. We have seen how knowing the stakeholders is important, as well as positioning them by role and importance with respect to the project to be implemented in our destination. A third essential aspect is that of interaction between stakeholders. In fact, as stated by Roxas and colleagues, stakeholders are becoming more concerned as to how destinations can be developed and managed sustainably. Together with the identification on who they are and what their roles are, there is a need to further investigate their interaction with each other. True, we can easily agree with this declaration, but how can we do in concrete to boost interaction and collaboration with and between stakeholders? Let's proceed from the macro level to the micro level. This slide shows us the three-level general frame in which the single stakeholders can interact and collaborate. We talk about policy when we consider a guiding framework for decisions about the future tourism governance, development, or promotion of a country. A tourism policy document details what governments choose to do or not to do with respect to tourism. As for governance, we have the sum of the many ways individuals and institutions, public and private, manage their common affairs. It is a continuing process through which conflicting or diverse interests may be accommodated and cooperative action may be taken. It includes governance and vertical cooperation like national, regional, local levels and PPPs that are public-private partnerships. Finally, when talking about management, we mean the mechanisms to coordinate all the elements that make up a tourism destination, taking a strategic approach to link up these sometimes very separate elements for the better management of the destination, avoiding, for sure, overlapping functions and duplication of effort with regards to promotion, visitor services, training, and business. The Destination Management Organization, DMO, role should be to lead and coordinate activities under a coherent strategy in pursuit of this common goal. As for tourism destination policy, public sector can play the role of facilitator and regulator in boosting, for example, green economy and engaging consumers, businesses, and destinations stakeholders. On the left side of the slide, we have an example on how to manage a green event. While on the right side, we have a policy document, the PNRR, for Italy, Piano Nazionale di Ripresa e Resilienza. It is a document on green economy strategy, including chapters to tourism and circular economy. After seeing the policy and governance levels, we now consider the management of the destination. In this case, the roles are diversified if we consider, for instance, a DMO, a DMC, a TO, or a group of collaborating stakeholders. According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, a DMO, Destination Management Organization, is a non-profit organization that deals with the coordinated management strategies of all the elements that make up a tourist destination. A DMO is usually characterized by a partnership between public and private entities. In Italy, DMOs are often emanations from public bodies like regions, provinces, and municipalities. In any case, the main objectives of a DMO are run an integrated and systematic promotion of a tourism destination, solicit collaboration between operators in the tourism supply chain, train tour operators, support and advise businesses to overcome any management gaps, and carry out project and fundraising activities to the benefit of the destination, of course. The main role of a DMC, destination marketing company, consists in the construction of marketable and saleable tourist offers. DMCs are profit-making companies. They aim above all at the marketing of its services and the tourism products. And they are not always local, regional in nature, but are specialized in the clusters of products which are very often located in diverse destinations. We can say that both the DMO and the DMC can represent an effective promotional and marketing tool for tourism destinations, although playing different roles, especially from the point of view of the destination management and the commercialization of its products. Then we have tour operators. Tour operators usually operate transversely and on multiple destinations, composing packages and flattening the sales price. Tour operators usually collaborate with local correspondents who manage all the services necessary for the realization of a tour or event on a specific destination. Finally, PPPs, public-private partnerships, are collaborations that are usually created to carry out a project or achieve a common goal. The formalization of a PPP is varied. For example, you can set up an association or a consortium. Let me spend a final word on how all these subjects can be activated and contribute to the development of the destination. Generally speaking, what is happening in territorial marketing is that we are passing from a vertical approach to a participatory approach. In the first case, the approach is top-down and implies only actors or the government pursuing public goals, while in the second case, the participatory approach, we have an approach which is bottom-up and includes also non-government actors. Here, the goals are collective and shared. Rightly because the participatory approach considers a variety of actors, it is key to identify who they are, but also how they can participate in the development and management of the destination. Within this ecosystem, of course, there is local community. The topic of stakeholder mapping is dense. We have noticed that. But the last part of this unit cannot be missing, because it is dedicated to the practical tools for interact, collaborate and cooperate with the key stakeholders. So I ask you a last effort to follow these remaining slides. Our first tool is that of the stakeholder map. In addition to identifying the stakeholders, it is useful to position them in this map based on the priorities of their intervention in the project and the type of interaction that needs to be maintained with them. This is also a communication issue. Also in this case, the starting point is the objective of the project and its state of progress. Precisely because the interaction and management of collaborative relationships with the various stakeholders is a key point for the success of our project, let's now see how to set up our communication correctly and effectively. The box on the left shows us some questions that help us identify the information needs of our counterpart, like the stakeholder with whom we want to get in touch and build a collaboration. The questions are: who is the stakeholder in terms of role, power, interest, aptitude for the project? Who are the stakeholders' expectations about the project? What do we want from this stakeholder? How to handle this stakeholder? On the right, we see some possible categories of stakeholders. Once we have identified our counterpart, we need to characterize our communication. In this case, the questions that are useful to answer are: what information should the stakeholder receive? In which format? Through which media channel? When? How often? And from whom should the stakeholder receive the communication? The communication effort must also be coherent with the level of influence power and the level of interest support of the diverse stakeholders. For this reason, it is useful to prioritize the communication taking into account these factors. The figure on the right offers us a four-quadrant map on which to place the various stakeholders based on their potential impact on the project. To position our stakeholders on the axis related to the level of their influence power, we can consider these questions. What level of influence do they have in the project? High? Low? What level of power do they have? High? Low? To position our stakeholders on the axis related to the level of their interest and involvement, we can consider these questions. How much are they engaged in supporting the project? And which needs do they have in relation to the project? The intersection of the two axes will lead us to establish intervention priorities: monitor, keep informed, keep satisfied, or manage closely. Here we have some examples of what to do with communication and with which types of stakeholders. Another tool is this one, which helps us to record the descriptive data on our stakeholders. Organize a database with them can be useful, and with the next slides we will see how to enrich this first version of the file. Here we have a table collecting different types of data, like the name of the stakeholders, our expectation towards him, his expectations towards the project, his level of power and engagement, and some notes on how to treat him. Here we've got an example on how to fill in the database. Notice that the last column reports what you put in the matrix we saw before, that of the four quadrants crossing level of impact on the project and level of engagement in the project of your stakeholders. A final tip: you can organize your database using MS Excel, MS Access, or integrating it with a CRM, customer relationship management software. The next step is to adopt concrete ways to communicate with your stakeholders, choosing the appropriate solution for each one. Bear in mind that the graph only represents some possibilities. It's up to us to identify the best way of interacting with our stakeholder and through which channels that are usually more than one. Communication can also be organized in terms of contents and time. That's why having an editorial calendar where to keep control on all our communication effort and channels is really useful. The table shows the usual type of info we might require to start planning our communication routine. Stakeholder, informative need, from who, frequency, modality, format, since when, till when. Here you've got an example on how to fill in the file. And here we have an example of editorial calendar for our communication on social media, containing full detail on the social media on which to publish the content, day of the week expected to publish the post, progress of the publication, date and time the post was published, type of post object, for instance an event, a product, the result of research, the copy that summarizes the content of the post, and the various links for its publication. Fine! We are at the end of Unit 1 of Section 3, the unit on mapping stakeholders. The slide wraps up the four main points we have seen. We talked about over-tourism and sustainability, how to identify the key actors, stakeholders, the difference between policy, governance and management of the destination, and the fact that they all three provide the frame for stakeholders to interact and collaborate. And finally, we saw some tools to manage the interaction with the key stakeholders and some tools to facilitate their collaboration. I hope you find interesting and useful the contents of this unit. Remember that, in case you would like to get into more detail with the topics we covered, you can find a selection of further information materials in section 3 on our INCULTUM platform. Thank you and see you on the next unit.